In this module, a group of concerned employers find out from the expert what they have to do to comply with the Chrome-6 regulation. If your employees weld or cut on stainless steel or other chromium-containing metals, you'll want to know about the Chrome-6 regulation that DOSH passed in 2006.
So what do I have to do to be in compliance with this DOSH regulation?
That's a good question, but first let's talk about two important concepts: the permissible exposure limit, or PEL, and the action level. The DOSH regulation establishes a PEL that limits a worker's exposure to an airborne concentration less than 5 micrograms of Chrome-6 per cubic meter of air, averaged over an 8-hour work shift. DOSH has also set an action level of 2.5 micrograms per cubic meter of air, also averaged over an 8-hour shift. When exposures are at this concentration, employers must initiate a variety of actions to protect their workers.
Sounds like I should read the standard, but tell me, what is the most important thing that I need to do?
As a manager with employees doing hot work on stainless, you'll need to collect personal air samples for Chrome-6. You'll probably need to check with an industrial hygienist for information on the approved method for air sampling. You'll also want to collect air samples that represent all the different hot work tasks that you do in your shop.
So what do I do with all that information?
Even though it's not required if the results are low, it's always a good policy to share the results of air sampling with your employees. And you must keep the records of the air sampling results for at least 30 years.
What else do we have to do?
You'll have to repeat the monitoring if there are changes in process or production that could change Chrome-6 exposures, and you must train your employees on the regulation.
I read the standard and it said we have to keep the shop clean. What does that mean exactly?
Regardless of the air sampling results, you'll have to develop housekeeping procedures to keep surfaces as free of Chrome-6 contamination as possible. Cleaning methods could be vacuuming surfaces with a HEPA vacuum or using a wet rag to wipe down surfaces. Any waste, scrap, debris, or any other materials contaminated with Chrome-6, including LEV system filters, must be placed in sealed, impermeable bags or other closed impermeable containers for disposal. Check with your local hazardous waste regulator to see how to dispose of chromium-contaminated waste.
I've heard that everyone needs to have skin protection like Tyvek, but I don't want my welders catching their Tyvek suits on fire.
Well, that's a good point. DOSH has taken that into consideration. According to their Wisha Regional Directive, additional protective clothing and equipment may not be required during typical stainless steel welding operations.
What do I need to do if we do have exposures that are higher than the actual level, but it's still less than the PEL, and we do these processes every day?
In addition to complying with the basic elements of the regulation, you'll need to repeat your air sampling every 6 months until levels are below the action level. You must conduct medical surveillance on workers who are exposed above the action level for more than 30 days per year. Make sure you have an occupational medicine doctor performing the medical surveillance for your workers. And remember that you'll need to keep records of the air sampling and the medical surveillance for at least 30 years.
What should I do if our exposures are higher than the PEL, but we rarely ever work on stainless? Definitely less than 30 days out of the year.
Well, that's a good question, because you'll have to comply with all the basic elements of the regulation, and you'll need to conduct air monitoring every 3 months. You must share the results with your employees and provide appropriate respiratory protection. You'll need to establish, mark, and control the areas where employee exposures are expected to be higher than the PEL. Because of this requirement, you may want to do stainless hot work in only one area of your shop. The best way to reduce and keep your welders' exposures below the PEL and action level is by using engineering and work practice controls. Respirators are less reliable than using engineering controls like LEV. There may be some situations, such as hot work in a confined space, when local exhaust ventilation may not be enough to control exposures, and a respirator will also be required. If you plan to purchase an LEV system, your welders may need to wear a respirator until it's installed and evaluated for effectiveness.
Well, we do a lot of hot work on stainless, and our exposures are likely to be higher than the PEL most of the time, certainly more than 30 days out of the year.
Okay. In addition to complying with the basic elements of the regulation, you must use feasible engineering controls like LEV or change your work practices to reduce exposures below the PEL. If those controls and work practices do not reduce exposures below the PEL, then respirators must also be used. As an employer, you must ensure that your welders are not exposed to Chrom-6 above the action level. If you use effective local exhaust ventilation, you may reduce your welders' exposures below the action level so that the more extensive elements of the regulation will not apply to you.
Thanks, this is helpful, but what do I do if I need more information?
You can get more information on the Chrom-6 requirements by calling L&I at 1-800-423-7233 or by contacting your local L&I office. A list of the office phone numbers can also be found in the video's manual. More information and resources can be found by going to the L&I website at www.lni.wa.gov/safety, finding the safety index and clicking on the H, then scrolling down to Hexavalent Chromium. Here you'll find the regulation, videos, and other helpful resources.